The scent of old money and fresh betrayal hung heavy in Isabella's penthouse, a perfumed poison that clung to the gilded edges of everything it touched. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a glittering panorama of the city, a kingdom of light spread out like a treasure map for the taking. It was here, amid the cold marble and curated art, that three women gathered, their shadows long and their intentions darker still. They were a sisterhood bound not by blood, but by a shared, ruthless understanding of how the world truly worked and a willingness to exploit it. Isabella stood at the center of the room, a statuesque figure in silk, her movements as precise and calculated as a surgeon-esque. She did not need to call for silence, her presence commanded it. With a slow, deliberate gesture, she placed a single, grainy photograph on the obsidian coffee table. It was a picture of Arthur Sterling, a man whose public face was one of boundless philanthropy, but whose private fortune was the truth. Object of their desire, her voice when it came was a low, hypnotic murmur as she unveiled the plan. $7 million in life insurance, a sum that could buy more than luxury. It could purchase absolution, power, and a permanent escape from the ghosts of their pasts. Maria was the first to lean in, her eyes sharp and flinty, gleaming with a fire that had nothing to do with greed and everything to do with vengeance. She spoke of a business deal years prior, a betrayal that had left her family in ruins while Sterling's empire flourished. For her, the money was secondary. It was the score she needed to settle, the long-delayed justice for a wound that had never healed. Her motive was a cold, hard stone in her gut, and it left no room for doubt. Then all eyes turned to Chloe, the youngest, who seemed to shrink into the plush velvet of the sofa. Her desire was the most primal, the most transparent. She spoke of suffocating debt, of a life spent running from collectors and the shame. Of financial ruin, the $7 million represented a clean slate, a chance to breathe without the constant, crushing weight of poverty. Yet, as she voiced her need, a tremor of hesitation ran through her. The word murder seemed to echo in the opulent silence, a stark, ugly contrast to the surrounding splendor. Isabella watched the conflict play out on Chloe's face, her own expression a mask of serene impatience. She countered every flicker of doubt with cold, hard logic, painting their hesitance as a luxury none of them could afford. She spoke of the corrosive nature of their current lives, how true power was never given but taken. The air grew thick with avarice, a tangible force that pressed in on Chloe, smothering her nascent morality. In the end, it was the gleam in Isabella's eyes, the promise of an end to her desperation, that sealed it. Under the crystalline glow of the chandelier, amidst the trappings of wealth that had corrupted them all in different ways, their pact was silently solidified, a deadly agreement forged in the heart of luxury, its glittering surface hiding the rot within. The city became their hunting ground, a sprawling chessboard upon which they moved their pieces with silent, predatory grace. For days, they wove themselves into the fabric of Arthur Sterling's life, becoming ghosts in his periphery, learning the rhythm of his existence. He was a creature of elegant habit, a man whose life was a curated performance of charity galas, boardroom lunches, and retreats to his secluded, fortress-like mansion overlooking the river. They tracked his movements in a relentless, three-pronged assault, each woman playing her part in the meticulous deconstruction of his world. Isabella was the social saboteur, a shimmering mirage in designer gowns who infiltrated the glittering fundraisers Sterling frequented. With a laugh like chilled champagne and a smile that promised secrets, she charmed his associates, her conversations a masterclass in subtle extraction. She learned of his favorite wine, his distrust of digital banking, his late-night walks through his private gardens. Each morsel of information was passed along, another thread pulled from the tapestry of his security. While Isabella worked the crowds, Maria, with her technical genius and a past that had taught her to see the weaknesses in any system, dissected his physical domain. Through high-powered lenses from a rented van, she mapped the blind spots in his estate's camera coverage, noted the rotation of his private security, and identified the delivery schedules that offered windows of opportunity. Her greatest discovery came from a thermal imaging scan of his study, revealing the faint, cool signature of a digital safe hidden behind a false panel of mahogany bookshelf. It was a modern treasure chest, and its existence solidified their target. Chloe, tasked as the primary lookout, felt the weight of the surveillance most acutely. Stationed in cafes and parked cars, she was the silent witness to the man behind the myth. She watched him stride from his town car, his posture one of weary authority. But it was a smaller, quieter moment that lodged itself in her conscience. One evening, as Sterling walked alone, he paused by an old street vendor selling roasted chestnuts. He bought a bag, overpaid with a crumpled bill, and shared a brief, genuine laugh with the man. clapping him on the shoulder before moving on. It was a simple, uncalculated act of kindness, a stark contradiction to the monstrous portrait Isabella had painted. A cold knot of guilt tightened in Chloe's stomach, and the $7 million began to feel less like a salvation and more like a blood-soaked weight. Later, gathered in the dim, temporary safety of a rented storage locker filled with their equipment, Maria laid out the final piece of their grim puzzle. She produced a small, unlabeled vial containing a clear, viscous liquid. She explained its properties in a detached, clinical tone, odorless, tasteless, and undetectable in a standard autopsy, mimicking the symptoms of a sudden, catastrophic heart attack. Her proposal was chilling in its simplicity. They would not stage a violent robbery or a messy confrontation. They would orchestrate an accident, a quiet, tragic end for a beloved philanthropist. The air in the room grew thin and cold. The scheme was no longer an abstract plan discussed in a penthouse. It had crystallized into a tangible, deadly act, and the tension among them stretched to a breaking point, magnified by the poison in Maria's steady hand and the doubt in Chloe's haunted eyes. The art of the perfect coincidence was a dance Isabella had mastered long ago, a performance of chance encounters and lingering glances designed to feel like fate. She chose the city's most exclusive antiquarian bookshop, a place she knew Arthur Sterling visited every Tuesday to browse first editions. The air was thick with the scent of aged leather and old paper. Hallowed quiet that her entrance effortlessly disrupted. Dressed in understated elegance, she was a study in calculated allure, her fingers trailing over gilt-edged spines until they paused on a volume she knew was his favorite. When he rounded the corner of the towering shelf, their meeting was a masterpiece of staged serendipity. Her smile was a flash of genuine-seeming surprise, her conversation a blend of intellectual curiosity and subtle, flattering attention. Within an hour, she had not only captivated him, but had secured an invitation to a private dinner at his estate that very evening, a triumph that felt less like a victory and more like the springing of a trap. While Isabella wove her web of charm, Maria was dismantling his digital moat from the back of a nondescript van parked 3 blocks away. The glow of multiple screens illuminated her focused face as her fingers flew across keyboards, breaching firewalls and rewriting code. She slipped past his home security system like a ghost, rendering motion sensors blind and cameras looped on empty, tranquil footage of hallways and gardens. The estate, a formidable fortress from the outside, became a vulnerable shell, its electronic eyes closed by her silent command. She confirmed the location of the hidden safe in his study, its digital lock now a puzzle she was confident she could solve when the time came. The house was theirs for the taking. As the final piece of the alibi, Chloe immersed herself in a world of hollow laughter and sparkling lies. She attended a high-profile gallery opening downtown, a decoy event filled with the city's art elite. She wore a dress of sapphire blue, a beacon meant to be remembered, and made a point of speaking with journalists and prominent socialites, ensuring her presence was logged and witnessed. The champagne flute felt like a lead weight in her hand, every smile a crack in her composure. Surrounded by the vibrant, chaotic art, all she could see was the quiet, kind-faced man. From the street, completely unaware of the Viper being welcomed into his home, the gilded cage of the gallery felt more like a prison, her own role as the alibi a chain that bound her to a destiny she was no longer certain she wanted. Later that night, positioned just outside the grand dining room with a listening device Maria had provided, Chloe heard the scene unfold. The soft clink of fine china and crystal, the low, melodic murmur of Isabella's laughter. And then Sterling's voice, clear and filled with a warmth that was utterly disarming. He was speaking not of business or investments, but of his staff. He expressed genuine concern for his housekeeper's ill grandson, detailing how he had personally ensured the family had the best medical care. He spoke of his chauffeur's aspirations to start a small business and how he was quietly providing the seed capital. These were not the performative acts of a public philanthropist, but the private, uncalculated kindnesses of a good man. Each word was a shard of ice in Chloe's heart, deepening the chasm between the monstrous caricature she had agreed to destroy and the compassionate human being she was betraying. The duality of their deception yawned before her, Isabella's masterful performance of humanity on one side of the door, and Sterling's authentic, unguarded version on the other, with Chloe trapped in the middle, her greed and her empathy locked in a silent, brutal war. The penthouse, once a sanctuary for their conspiracy, now felt like a cage. The polished marble floors reflected not just the city lights but the fractured trust between the 3 women. Maria stood before the panoramic window, her back to the room, her posture rigid with a new, unsettling confidence. She turned, her flinty eyes meeting Isabella's, and delivered her confession not with shame, but with the cool precision of a business proposition. She revealed her secret alliance with Julian Croft, Sterling's most vicious business rival. Croft had promised her a payout that dwarfed her share of the insurance, a sum so vast it would not only settle her score, but elevate her to a throne of her own. Her plan was to sabotage their kill, to deliver Sterling's company into Croft's hands through a carefully orchestrated corporate coup that would render the insurance policy a mere footnote. The betrayal was not born of passion, but of a colder, more calculated greed. A terrifying stillness fell over Isabella. The serene mask she always wore shattered, revealing the raw, ruthless nature beneath. Her eyes, usually so controlled, burned with a cold fire. She did not shout or rage. Instead, a slow, predatory smile touched her lips as she absorbed the information. In that moment, Maria ceased to be an ally and became a liability, a loose thread that threatened to unravel their entire scheme. Isabella's mind, a labyrinth of cunning and self-preservation, immediately began recalculating. The plan was no longer just about Arthur Sterling. It was about consolidation, about cutting out the rot. She decided with a chilling finality that Maria would be the first to die. The original plot was now a dual execution, a bloody consolidation of power and the silencing of a traitor. Chloe, who had been listening in horrified silence from the shadows of the leather sofa, felt the last vestiges of their twisted alliance crumble to dust. She saw the murderous intent in Isabella's eyes, the utter lack of remorse in Maria's, and the reflection of her own corrupted self in the dark glass of the window. The image of Sterling's kindness, the memory of his concern for his staff, rose in her mind, a stark indictment of their moral decay. She stood, her voice trembling not with fear, but with a desperate, final surge of conscience. She confronted Isabella, her words tumbling out in a torrent of anguish. She spoke of the man they were about to destroy, of the humanity they were sacrificing on the altar of their avarice. She accused Isabella of becoming a monster, of dragging them all into an abyss from which there was no return. The confrontation exploded into a blistering argument that echoed through the sterile luxury of the penthouse. Isabella met Chloe's moral crisis with scalding contempt, dismissing her guilt as a pathetic weakness, a luxury they could not afford. She mocked Chloe's sudden attack of conscience, framing it as a betrayal equal to Maria's. The air crackled with venom and fractured loyalties. The sisterhood of the Black Widows was broken, shattered by greed from within and a flicker of morality from one of its own. Chloe, realizing the futility of her plea, retreated, her face pale and streaked with tears, the chasm between them now a permanent, unbridgeable gulf. In the ringing silence that followed, Isabella stood alone at the center of the room, the city's lights twinkling like 1,000 indifferent stars. The fracture was complete. Maria was a traitor to be eliminated. Chloe was a sentimental liability, and Sterling was the prize. There was no more room for the careful, patient stalking. The timeline had to accelerate, the plan compressed into a single, decisive move. She would use the upcoming dinner, the very stage she had so carefully set for Sterling's demise, to dispatch both her former ally and their target in one swift, brutal stroke. The game was no longer about subtle poison and staged accidents. It was about survival, power, and the utter annihilation of anyone who stood in her way. The grand dining hall of Arthur Sterling's estate was a mausoleum of good intentions, its long mahogany table gleaming under the soft glow of a crystal chandelier. Portraits of stern ancestors looked down upon the scene, their painted eyes seeming to bear witness to the betrayal unfolding in their sanctum. Sterling, ever the gracious host, was a portrait of genuine warmth, his smiles directed at Isabella, who sat to his right, a vision of composed beauty. But beneath the table, pristine linen, her hands were cold, and in the delicate purse at her feet rested the vial of Maria's undetectable poison. Every clink of silverware, every sip of wine, was a measured step in a deadly ballet. The tension was a live wire stretched taut between the three women. Maria, seated opposite Isabella, watched her every move with the unblinking focus of a hawk, her earlier confidence now sharpened into a blade of suspicion. Chloe, positioned at the foot of the table, was a ghost at the feast, her face a pale mask of dread, her untouched food a testament to the churning conflict within her. She saw the predatory stillness in Isabella's posture, the calculated flutter of her lashes, and knew the moment was approaching. It came as the main course was cleared. Sterling raised his glass of deep red wine, offering a toast to new friendships and fortunate encounters. As he spoke, Isabella's hand dipped into her purse with a magician's deftness. The small vial was in her palm, its cap Loosened under the cover of the table's vast expanse, her fingers crept towards Sterling's glass. But Maria was already moving, her chair scraping back with a jarring screech that shattered the civilized ambience. She lunged across the table, her hand clamping around Isabella's wrist, forcing the poison-filled fist into the open. The vial clattered onto the table, a tiny damning cylinder of clear liquid. A violent struggle erupted in an instant, a whirlwind of silk and fury. Sterling stared, dumbfounded, as the two women he knew as acquaintances became feral combatants. Isabella fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, her manicured nails becoming claws. Maria, driven by a lifetime of bitterness, and this final, ultimate betrayal was just as savage. Chloe cried out, rushing forward not to join the fray, but to try and wedge herself between them, her voice a desperate plea for reason that was lost in the snarls, and the sound of shattering crystal as a candelabra was knocked to. The floor, in the chaotic tangle of limbs, Sterling staggered back, his hand going to his chest. A strange, cold numbness was spreading through him, a tingling that climbed from his fingertips to his jaw. He looked down at his wine glass, which he had sipped from mere moments before the struggle began, and a dawning horror touched his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a choked gasp emerged. His legs buckled, and he collapsed to the Persian rug, his body convulsing once before falling terrifyingly still. The sight of his collapse froze them all for a single, suspended second. It was the opening Isabella needed. With a guttural cry, she drove a silver letter opener she had snatched from the sideboard deep into Maria's side. Maria's eyes widened in shock, a single, sharp exhalation escaping her lips before she crumpled to the floor, her lifeblood seeping into the intricate pattern of the rug beside the man she had conspired to betray. Isabella did not hesitate. Her gaze swept. The room falling on a small, unlocked wall safe behind Sterling's chair, not the main digital one, but a decoy containing his late wife's jewel collection. She ripped the emerald necklace and diamond earrings from their velvet beds, stuffing them into her purse. It was a pittance compared to the 7 million, a hollow consolation prize snatched in panic. Her eyes met Chloe's, who was kneeling beside Sterling's body, her hands pressed uselessly against his still chest. There was no recognition in Isabella's look, only the cold void of a predator escaping a trap. She turned and fled into the night, leaving behind the carnage and the echoes of her greed. Chloe, alone with the two bodies, fumbled for her phone. Her call for help was a broken, sobbing confession to the dispatcher. When the police arrived, they found her covered in Sterling's blood, her alibi shattered, her presence at the scene of a double homicide damning. The jewels were gone, the primary suspect had vanished, and Chloe. The reluctant conspirator was the only one left to handcuff and lead away, a pawn sacrificed in a game she never truly had the heart to play. Miles away, speeding through the rain-slicked streets in a stolen car, Isabella clutched the stolen jewels. The gems were cold and hard against her skin, their brilliant facets reflecting the flashing city lights. But they offered no warmth, no triumph. The 7 million was lost, Maria was dead by her hand, Sterling was gone, and Chloe was in custody. The victory she had craved was ashes in her mouth. All that remained was the ghost of Maria's final, shocked expression and the chilling silence of the dining hall. The insatiable greed that had driven her had not brought power or freedom. It had only wrought a vast and inevitable ruin, and she was now its sole, haunted architect, forever fleeing the ghosts of her own creation.